That's where we're holding. Okay. So what we learned in the Mishnah was that a woman whose husband and rival wife went on a trip, and then witnesses come and say that the husband passed away. So there's a concern that if she would get married, she has to do yibum. She can't get married. She has to do yibum. But there's also so let her do yibum. But there's also a concern that maybe the rival wife has had a child. Meanwhile, and then if there's a child, then she can't do yibum. So it says she can't get married, and she also doesn't do yibum until we find out if there was a child. Okay. Then I'm going to start from Leiti Nase V'Leitis Yabin. It's 8 lines down. Then the second case of the Mishnah was where there's a the mother-in-law, the husband went on a trip together with the was it together with with his father? Maybe. Whatever the case is, there is a mother-in-law that maybe had a child. She thinks that she could get married, she could marry anyone now because the husband passed away without any siblings. There is no Yavam to do Yibum. But there's a possibility that maybe a new Yavam was born because the mother-in-law is still a young woman that could have children. So we said over there that you don't have to worry about that. That you don't have to worry about. It's interesting. By the wife, we said you do have to worry about. By the Yavam, you don't have to. By the mother-in-law, you don't have to worry that maybe she had another child. And it doesn't have to do with her age. Right? Remember that, excuse not for the kid. Please excuse Maishala. His grandmother had a baby. And he had to watch his aunts and uncles. Okay, so now it says, we're talking about the woman whose husband went on the trip together with the rival wife. She can't do yibam and she can't do we didn't really get into why she can't do chalitza, but she can't get married to anyone else and she also can't do yibam. Maybe there's a child. The Gemara says, I can understand that she doesn't do yibam. Why? Dilma miabra. Maybe the rival wife has become pregnant. She's not allowed to marry her husband's brother if her husband has had a child. It's only to upkeep. The brother would only marry her to upkeep the namesake of the deceased, but there is already a child, so then they're forbidden to each other. But why can't she just get married to anyone? Why not? Well, what's the suggestion? What about the yibam? Says, well, don't worry about the yibam. Why not? It says halacha charev nashim. Look, there's majority of women in the world have a baby. Statistics, right? The majority of women in the world are going to have a baby. So v'reiv nashim misabris v'yoldis. So why don't we just say that this woman that went together, the rival wife that went together with the husband, is pregnant and had a baby, and so therefore, let's make that assumption based on the majority, and say that she's allowed to marry. The wife for sure got pregnant, had a baby. All women get pregnant, have a baby. The Gemara says you can't say that because Lamer Reb Meir. We could say that it's the opinion of Reb Meir. Reb Meir is famous for this opinion that the chayesh l'miyuta, he suspects for the minority. He says usually in the Torah we always say, "Oh, you follow the majority." Well, not so clear. There's a machlekes. Reb Meir says no. You have to suspect to the minority. What's the minority? Some women don't have a baby. Okay. So it must be that the Mishnah is the opinion of Reb Meir that suspects the minority. The Gemara says, "I feel Tamer Rabbanan." It's not so. You could even say our Mishnah is the Rabbanan. Kias the Rabbanan Basaruba. When the sages that argue on Reb Meir, they say that you follow the majority. What type of majority? There's two types of majority. There's a Ruba de Isa Kaman, and there's a Ruba de Lesa Kaman. A majority that's in front of us, and then there's a majority that's not in front of us. Majority that's in front of us is Kegain Teshach Hanoyos v'Sanhedrin. If you have 10 stores or 9 stores, 10 stores in total, 9 of them sell kosher meat. One of them is not. You find the meat in front of the stores in the plaza, somewhere in a bag in the front of the stores. They all have the same bags. You say it's probably kosher, right? Came from the majority. I look at how many stores there are here. 9 of them are kosher. It's probably kosher. Or Sanhedrin. I have majority of the Sanhedrin. Let's say it's 23 judges. I have 12 of them that are saying one thing, and 11 are saying others. I follow the majority. However, Avul Ruba the lesser come on, but when we're using a statistic, that's a majority that's not in front of us. It doesn't tell us anything. The statistics don't tell me anything about this case. Statistics is for insurance, purposes. Doesn't tell me what's happening right here with my scenario. What's going on right here? It has no. Doesn't mean anything to me right here. Do you follow? That's a totally different type of majority. A statistic.
So if someone says, 99% of people get COVID-19, right? Well, I want to know about this case in front of me.
Right.
No, but they can't cite the statistic you mean to.
Right. So when do the rabbis say that they follow the majority? When you see the majority right here, look, there's 9 stores. Who do you think, which store do you think it came from? Probably from one of these 9, not the one that's the non-kosher one. But that's right here.
Right.
But then there's starting to talk about things in the world, how many people there are in the world and whatever and all of that. That doesn't tell me, that doesn't have the same bearing on what I'm dealing with right in front of me. So so to tell me that most women get pregnant and have children and have a child, that doesn't tell me about this woman. Okay, it's a good teretz. It's a good teretz. It's saying why we don't say that she for sure had a child, and we should let this woman get married to anyone because the rival wife had a child. Therefore, that means the husband had a child, which means that she's not required to do yibum. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? I can prove it to you that the rabbis follow a statistic.
Oh.
A statistic majority. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. The minors cannot do chalitza or yibam. Div Reb Meir, that's the view of Reb Meir. Amalei Reb Meir, they said to Reb Meir, Yafa Amrit Shein Cholzen. We agree with you that a minor cannot do chalitza. Why? Because it says ish ksiv b'parsha. It says ish. And remember the pasuk. What does it say? Late. Remember the pasuk? Do you have it over there? V'cholzu ish. Does it say ish nalai or something? Okay, it says ish. Makshina and ishal ish, and then we compare because it says ish. Ish means a man, not a child. So, and then we say that the woman also has to be, because we do this comparison. If the man has to be an adult, so does the woman have to be an adult. Makshina ishal ish. But why can't you do yibam? The children, they just let them do yibam. What is yibam? They marry. The brother of the deceased marries the widow.
Right.
What's the problem? Over there, it doesn't say the word ish. Amalahem, so Reb Meir responds, Katan, the reason why you can't use it, the child can't do yibam, Shemayim Tsasaris. Maybe we're going to find out that he's a eunuch and he can't upkeep the name of his the namesake of his deceased brother. He can't have children. Tana Shematim to islandess. And the girl, maybe she's an islandess. I mean, she's not fully developed and she can't have children either. So then what's happening? The person's not allowed to marry his sister-in-law unless it's the mitzvah of Yibum. But because over here it's not the mitzvah of Yibum, so it's a very serious prohibition. He's marrying his sister-in-law. Okay, so that's the opinion of Reb Meir. Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan say about this? Rabbanan Savri, Zil Basaruba, what are you worried about? You could follow the majority. Ruba Diktanim. Most children are not eunuchs, statistically. Most, right? And Zil Basaruba Ktanis, and you can also follow the statistics of the girls. Most girls are not underdeveloped, that never fully developed. Most girls are not like that. So therefore, we can have a safe assumption to say that we could follow a statistical majority. We can follow that majority. We see that the rabbis follow the majority. Now, if the rabbis follow the majority, then why don't they follow the majority that most women get pregnant and have a baby? And then we could say that this woman can get married to anyone because probably the rival wife got pregnant and had a baby. I have a question on this. Whole Gemara. Because most women will get pregnant and have a baby is looking at their whole lifespan. Not most women that go on a trip get pregnant and have a baby. That I don't have the statistics for that. So who's to say that in between, how old is she? Or whatever. She's 30, in between 30 and 30 and a half. That during those 6 months is when exactly she's going to have, right? So I have a question on this. Okay.
You need more detailed statistics. Right? You want
right.
Age specific statistics. Right? If you had them, then you'd be able to make.
They joke with statistics, though, because people don't really understand how statistics work. They say most people are above average. Okay. Allah, you can't have most people above average. The average means that's the average.
No, there's something that's the average, and then there's the majority.
The mean
the mode. Mode.
Okay. Allah machvarta, we're going to have to say that machvarta means it comes from the word chivar, which means white, clear. It's clear that masnisin Reb Meir, that our Mishnah is Reb Meir. What does that mean? That we're chayesh, we suspect to the minority of women that don't get pregnant, and that's why she can't. Just get married, but assuming that the co-wife had got pregnant and had a baby. Gemara now says, okay, if that's how you want to take this, we'll take you serious, and let's read the next part of the Mishnah. You established that the Mishnah is Reb Meir, Amos Seifa. Let's read further and see how it's going to work. What's the problem? Making statistics?
No, this is take a curve like this. This is the upper tail. These are rich people. These are the poor people. A lot of poor people. The average income is going to be the average is going to be here because you got a multi-millionaire. So most of them, most of the people are below average, and you can do the same thing on the reverse. Most people are above average, so it
doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think there's another statistics, not on average. It's they're just playing with the word because we don't.
So it is very possible that most people are above or below average.
Yeah, depending on the tails of the distribution.
Wow. Okay. So very good. I stand corrected.
Can't use that joke anymore.
That's right. He's got to give you a trophy. So, Ema Seifa. Let's read further. Haisala chamais. Let's say chamais means a father-in-law or a mother-in-law. A mother-in-law. Ina chesheshes. Yeah, means a mother-in-law. So you don't have to suspect that maybe the mother-in-law had a child, right? And therefore the husband has a sibling. You don't have to suspect that. Amai, why not? Halacha charev nashim. The Gemara plays this the opposite, but it's going to get to its point in a second. Let's look at the majority of women. Rev nashim misabris v'yoldas. Most people do get pregnant and have a child. Well, it turns out she already had her child, but we're saying we'll have another child. Miyut mapilas. There's only a minority that miscarry. That's interesting. Yeah. Minority that miscarries. B'chol yoldas mechza zachar mechza nekeva. Half will be male children, half will be female. All of them that don't miscarry are going to have that half. Miscarriages, it's probably the same, but for those that survive, half male, half female. Samach miyuta de mapilas lemechza nekevas. Well, what you have to do is like this. You have 50% of the surviving. Okay. Male is female, male to female. Then you add on to the female also all the miscarriages. That's also, of course, is going to make it that she doesn't have to do Yibam. Why? Because there's the miscarriages are not possible for Yibam. They're all not alive. And the females are also not possible for Yibam because she can only do Yibam with the husband's brother, not with the husband's sister. Can't marry the sister. She's the wife. So it's only the husband's brother. So so the male offspring of the mother-in-law will only be the minority. If you follow Reb Meir, so what? We should say that we should suspect to that. What do you need? Shmuel Gemara Sukkah? Which one do you need? Oh, Megillah, you have to go downstairs on the ladder. And who told you that it's here? You sure it's here? Okay. So v'leichash, we should suspect to the minority. The Gemara says it throws in one more factor here. It says Dilma kivan de ichzaka l'shuk leichayash, because there's something called a chazaka. Chazaka is the status that she was in before anything changed. What is her chazaka before anything changed? Is that her husband does not have any siblings. That was her status, that she's mutter to marry anyone when the husband dies. You're trying to tell me now that there was a new child that was born, and to change that assumed status, that it's going to take a little bit more effort to change the status. So keeping this chazak l'shuk leichayish. The Gemara says, 1 second. Reisha de ichzak leyibam tiyabim. If you want to keep things on their assumed status, let's take a look at the Reisha. What happened in the Reisha? Reisha means the beginning of the Mishnah. A woman that her husband and the rival wife went on a trip. And the husband died. So she should do Yibam. There were no children. But we said, no, maybe there were children. So what do you do? Why are you saying that? She has an assumed status that she's obligated to do Yibam. If you're telling me that you follow the assumed status, so why don't you do that over there? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua. We have to differentiate here between the Reisha and the Seifa. In the Seifa, what we're doing is we said that there's an assumed status that she's mutter to get married, and we retain that status. In the Reisha, there was assumed status that she has to do Yibam, and we didn't retain that status. So Rav Nachman says the name of his father-in-law, Rabbi Baravua. He says, Reisha de Isukar is Chashu. We don't keep that status. because we're concerned about the Isser Kares. If she really is not supposed to do Yibam, and she does, then she's marrying her brother. The brother is marrying the husband's wife, Eshesach, to Isser Kares. So therefore, we have to be much more cautious. Seifa the Isserlav leichashashu. In the Seifa, when she's going to get married to anyone from the market, that's the expression. I mean, she's not going to do Yibam. Why? She's just going to get married because she didn't have the husband didn't have any brothers. So we keep her on the assumed status that she can marry anyone. But maybe we should suspect that maybe there was a brother that was born, a new brother that was born. We say, no, we don't change that status because it's only an Isser Lav, and we could be lenient about this. Okay. Amar Rava. Rava says, Michti, 1 second. Hadaraisa v'hadaraisa. They're both biblical prohibitions. Mali Isser Kares, Mali Isser Lav. What are you making a big distinction over here because of what the punishment is? If it's a biblical prohibition, we should be strict. Ella Amar Rava. Rather, Rava says, Reisha Chazaka L'Yibam. Sets up, this Gemara sets up how Chazaka works and how Raiv works. In the beginning, there was a chazaka that there were no children. And so therefore, this woman is obligated to do Yibam. Right. However, Veruba Lashuk, but there is a majority. What's the majority? That most women get pregnant and have a child. Now that majority, the statistics, majority, but we said that we're going to follow. There's a statistic that says that she's allowed to marry anyone. Chazaka sends me to the Yavam. The statistic says that she can marry anyone. The Chazaka layadif kiruba. Chazaka is not as strong as the majority. Majority is stronger than Chazaka. But I see miyuta de mapilais samach lechazaka. What we'll do is there is a minority of women that miscarry. Yes. So what we'll do is we'll take that minority and add it on to the Chazaka. Let's say a Raiv is, when we have a question, say the Raiv is 51%, right? So, okay, that's the way we're headed. Chazaka is not really a 51%. Chazaka is 49% or something. But now we have a minority. So we throw that minority of the women that miscarry onto the Chazaka. And now the Chazaka that used to be only 49% is now, now I'm using a term that could be very confusing because I'm talking about percentages with assumptions. That's not how assumptions work. Assumption is something else. It's not a number. But that's, anyway. I see mutim mapil samachlas vavle palga. Now it makes it 50-50. So yeah, palga, half. Palga means to divide literally, but it means half and half. So Laitinas, there's the city in Iraq. I think it's called Fallujah. Is there a city Fallujah? I think that's Pampadisa is Fallujah. I think, and I think there was a river that divides it. That's what it's called.
Which were halfway.
Halfway. Yeah, that's what my friend told me. That Fallujah is because of the river. So, she can't do Yibam and she can't get married to anyone from the market because of the 50-50. Okay. Seifa, in the end of the Mishnah, she had a chazaka that she could marry anyone. Why? Because her husband passed away without any siblings. The mother-in-law is still alive. But chazaka tells me l'shuk, she can marry anyone, that there's no brother there. Right? No brother to do Yivaman, she can get married. Veruba, and there's a majority, l'shuk. That also says that she can get married. Why? Because there is a mother-in-law here. Now, the mother-in-law has a majority that's going to have a child, right? So why is she allowed to get married? Because you have to follow it like this. The child that the mother-in-law has that would cause obligation on her to do Yibam would need to be only a male child. Because there's some that miscarry, and then there's also half of them that are female. So altogether, it's a minority of her that would require her to do Yibam. The majority says that she can marry anyone. The miscarriages and the females don't create the obligation of Yibam. Turns out that the males that will be here are a minority of a minority. There's a minority that are, well, half of them are going to be female. And then there's a minority that are going to be miscarriages. So it makes them even less. So what are we left with? And Rameir doesn't suspect to a muta the muta. What does it mean exactly, muta the muta? I think it means muta de muta is that because the chazaka tells me that she can get married. And then the majority also tells me that she can get married. So the obligation to do Yibam is a minority of a minority, including the chazaka aspect. Okay, so we just explained the Mishnah. Why in the beginning of the Mishnah she's not allowed to do Yibam? And she's not allowed to get married to anyone. And in the Seifa, she is allowed to get married to anyone. It has to do with how we view the chazaka together with the right. Gemara says, she can't get married to anyone, and she also can't do Yibam. What time does the shir start? Oh, okay. The Gemara says like this. Uli Aylam. Does that go on forever? What's going to be with this woman? Her husband died, but we suspect that maybe there was a child that was born. So for her to get married to anyone, there may be an obligation to do Yibam. For her to do Yibam, there may be a child that was born. So she can't get married, she can't do Yibam. The obvious solution is to do Chalitza. The Gemara is going to ask that question. But meanwhile, it says she can't get married, she can't do Yibam. The Gemara says, Lo'ilam, that goes on forever. When does that stop? I mean, at a certain point, I guess it's clear that if you find out that there was no child, then there would be an obligation of Yibam. But before we have that, so Amar Ziri says, La'atzma shleish chadashim. Look, if it was herself, no tzara, no rival wife, just herself. The husband died. So then she would anyways have to wait 3 months. She can't do Yibam before 3 months, that we learned before. But you have to make sure that she wasn't pregnant from the husband that had just passed away. However, L'chaverta Tisha. For her friend, she has to wait 9 months. Because there's a friend, now a friend, it doesn't mean a friend. It means the rival wife. Now, why does she have to wait 9 months? It works like this. If there's a child, that child only exempts her from Yibam after the child's born, not in utero. So if she does a chalitza right now, the chalitza doesn't help because there's a child. The chalitza is nothing. Now that child doesn't exempt her until the child's born. Right. So you have to wait 9 months for sure. And then after that you do chalitza. So 9 months plus chalitza is going to absolve her, and she'll be free to get married. 9 months plus chalitza. See, it's going to work automatically like that. That is the opinion of Zeiri. For herself, if there's only one wife, so she would just wait 3 months. If there's another wife, she has to wait forever. Now, forever means until she finds out that the other wife did not get pregnant. But until then, until she clarifies that, until she, she's able to get that information, she can never get married. Gemara says, why not? Let her do chalitza, like Zeiri said. After 9 months, chalitza is going to work automatically. if there's a child, then she doesn't need the chalitza. And if there's no child, then she does need the chalitza, and it's going to work, so she can get married. Abaya Barav and Rav Chanina Barav and Amri Tarvayo, both of these sages, sons of Oven, Bar Oven, Abaya Chanina Bar Oven. They both say, Gezer Shem Yevlad ben Kayama. There is a concern that maybe there was really a child here. Now, if there was a child, did she need the chalitza? No, because she doesn't need to upkeep the Yavam doesn't need to upkeep the namesake of the brother because the brother passed away with leaving a descendant. Now, the woman, even though she did chalitza, but she's not considered a chalutza, and therefore she's permissible to marry a Kohen. So if we find out that there really was a child, Shemi Yevlad ben Kayama, maybe there was a child, because her shidduch turns out she found the Kayan, we're going to have to make an announcement that the chalitza that was done was not really necessary. She's actually permissible to do this marriage that she's about to do. The Gemara says, so because of that problem, you're telling me that she can't do chalitza and she can't. So make the announcement that the chalitza wasn't necessary. Gemara says, Dilma Ika the Havi b'chalitza v'lev b'achraza. Maybe there would be some people that were at the chalitza, but at the announcement they weren't there. They weren't there by the announcement of Amri, and they're going to think that kashar chalutza lakayan, that we're permitting a chalutza to marry a kayan. That's a problem. So because of this, we don't want to retract from a chalitza and then end up saying. And then having to make an announcement, people won't get it. It comes out that people are going to misunderstand the law. Tanan. Yeah. Isha. Is that in the pasuk? What does it say? Isha. What does the pasuk say? Isha, Gurusha. No, yeah. Okay. Tanan. Start in the Mishnah. Originally, when she left, she didn't have any children. So she doesn't have children. If the husband dies, she would have to do yibam. But she says that while she was on her trip with her husband, she actually had a child. However, the child passed away. Okay. She had a child and the child passed away, it's basically like the same thing as if she didn't have a child. And then the husband died. Oh. So Nemenis, she's believed. Why? That was her assumed status before she left. And that's her status after she has this claim. She's not really changing her status. She was always obligated to do Yibam. And now she's also obligated to do Yibam. And she's believed that the husband died. Let's say she changes her status. She says first the husband died, and then the child died. Ain't an menace. We don't believe her. What does she gain by saying that the child passed away after the husband? Now she doesn't need to do Yibam, because when the husband passed away, the child was there. She passed away with descendant. We don't believe her with this. The only thing that we believe a woman is that the husband died. However, we do suspect what she says. She does chalitza, but she doesn't do yibam. Okay. The Gemara says, according to what you're telling me, is that she's allowed to do chalitza, but she can't do yibam. Right. How are we allowed to? How can we let her do chalitza? What is chalitza going to do? It's going to permit her to marry anyone. She really is allowed to marry anyone, according to her words, even without the chalitza, because she claims she had a child. We just don't believe her. But let's say witnesses would come and tell us that she was right. She really did have the child. She should be now permissible to marry a kayan, because the chalitza that she did was nothing. She didn't need the whole chalitza. Problem is, according to the way we just said this before, we're going to have to make an announcement why she's allowed to marry a kohen. We don't want to make that announcement. So it says, let's suspect witnesses are going to come and testify that she was right in what she said. We're going to require her to make an announcement to allow her to marry a kohen. Papa begrusha. Papa says, you know why we don't have that announcement over here? This woman was already on her second marriage. Her first marriage ended in a divorce. She couldn't marry a kohen anyway. So that's why we're going to allow the chalitza. It's her second marriage that she's a widow. Okay.
They told us that to begin with.
That's right. That's right. Rav Chia Breder, this is how it's a riddle. Rav Chia Breder, Rav Huna Amra Ba'amra Ani V'hu Nechbenu B'mara. It was a type of case where we don't have to worry that witnesses are going to show up, because the scenario was that it's impossible for anyone to know. It was only her and the husband, or the son actually. And the husband. We're in the cave, and no one would together with no one else there. So it's impossible for there to be concern that there's going to be witnesses that are going to come and tell us that she really, the story was according to the way she said. Okay.
By the way, Professor, I don't remember exactly, but remember when the rabbi said, because I was listening to you,